Welcome to Fisher Webinars. The following is a recording of the Fundamental Flaw in CRM and the Fix data, originally recorded on Thursday, October 6, 2016.
On the agenda for today, we'll start out by looking at why we use CRMs. As part of that, what is the most important factor in their success? We'll then evaluate the main approaches in CRM that are available to suppliers of the pulp and paper industry. I will then make a case for Fisher Solve, which is Fisher International CRM, and then we'll see if we have time for a couple of questions at the end. So, do you need a CRM? They do take time to implement and to use. It's often difficult for management to get salespeople to use the CRM. Really, in general, a lot of people don't like CRM, so why even have one? Well, at the end of the day, people need support for sales. They just can't remember everything about every prospect. And also, employees leave companies. So when they do, knowledge from their sales calls will be lost if it isn't captured. There are really four critical functions of a CRM. The first is that it helps you spend time in the right places with the right prospects. The second is that it provides tools to help you prepare for calls and to demonstrate value. The third is that it helps you accumulate knowledge for your company. And the fourth factor is that it helps you measure performance of your people. So let's look at the options that are available and see how well these four functions are served. First, the old-fashioned way. So this is for companies that don't have CRM software. Maybe they just take notes into Microsoft Word or on a legal pad. Maybe they enter information into an Excel spreadsheet, or the information isn't captured anywhere. They just exchange information over emails or calls. Let's look at how well those four functions are served with this approach. Does it help you spend time in the right places? Well, not really, because it's pretty much just showing you where you've already been and maybe where others in your company have been. But whether or not those are the best prospects, maybe yes, maybe no. So we'll say no to that one. Does it provide you with tools that help you prepare for your calls and help you demonstrate value to your prospects? Well, again, it's really just what you've already had access to, what you already know, maybe going back and referring to a little bit of history, but no, there's really no help there either. What about accumulating knowledge for the company? Well, if everybody's doing their own thing in a different format and has their own system, then this is really impossible. So it doesn't do that one either. Let's see about the last one, if it does that. Measuring performance. Well, you could argue that in the Excel file, if you've got a small enough company and someone is meticulous about gathering all the sales for each of the people, then that's possible. But I've put a question mark here because in practice it's pretty difficult to do that in an Excel file. And these other approaches here, there's nothing here to measure performance at all. But we'll give that one a maybe. What about the more modern way? So these are icons here up top of some of the biggest CRM providers that you probably know. There's many, many more than this. But essentially the approach is similar in that you have some fields where you're entering in some contact information, addresses, phone numbers, a little bit of notes, and then the sales data can be viewed in graphical format. So maybe it's being pulled in electronically or uploaded so you can look at your pipeline in a visual format. The way this essentially works, regardless of the platform, is you type in the information and the software is a container that holds your information. So it simply reflects back what you know. And it takes time and effort to maintain. Probably why a lot of people don't want to use CRM is because of the time investment. Let's look at those four factors on this one. Does it help you spend time in the right places? Well, spending time in the right places is more than just showing up to the right address or calling on the right person. It's a targeting method. So again, it's more where you've already been, who you've been talking to, and not really offering any guidance in terms of what the best prospects should be. So no for that one. What about showing up prepared and demonstrating value? Does it provide tools there? Well, preparation is goes beyond just showing up at the right place and knowing who to ask for and having a little bit of notes. It's about being compelling and really proving your value to a prospect. So this is, again, it's just reflecting back what you already know. So it's just sort of a container for what you've already been doing, but not really any additional tool for helping you do that better. So we'll say no to that one as well. What about accumulating corporate knowledge? Well, if everyone has access to the system and it's a central platform and you've got all of the people who you want their input collected from on the CRM, then yes, any software can collect that information, and yes, it does do that. And what about measuring performance? Well, if you've got your sales data pulled in electronically or uploaded periodically, then yes, it will spit out what your sales numbers are and give you a way to track your performance. So you can see that the benefits so far are really more to the organization, collecting useful information from sales calls, and for management to be able to see how well their people are doing. But not a lot here for salespeople or product managers, the people that are tasked with actually taking the time to enter the information, because they would benefit more from those first two. But there's not a lot here in terms of helping them do their jobs better. And this is why I think there is a lot of resistance in companies, and where management wants people to use CRM, but salespeople just see it as an admin task or micromanaging tool and just time away from sales, which isn't, that's how they're evaluated. So it makes sense that that would be what they want to be focused on. What is the biggest problem with CRM? Well, we believe that it isn't the software that makes the CRM, the features, the interface. There are some that are better than others, but the main thing, the most important thing by far, is what's inside the CRM itself. And the reason most CRMs fail is because they lack data. You imagine being in a grocery store, and upon arrival you find some beautiful shelves, they're clean, they look like they could hold a lot of great stuff, but there's nothing there. That's a little bit like how we see CRM software that doesn't contain data. It doesn't really give you what you're there for. But what data does a CRM actually need? Well, it should support those 4 functions. You need data to make sure you're spending time in the right places. This goes beyond just where you've already been. It's finding every customer with the potential to buy from you, so not just the ones you already know. And you'll miss opportunities if the data that you're working with is incomplete. It's also sorting the wheat from the chaff. There's thousands of pulp and paper mills in the world, and usually large territories for salespeople to work with pretty limited resources. So ensure that you're at the best of the best, and that all sales time, all investments made by the company are only spent on productive calls. And the data has to be precise enough to make that determination. Let's look at an example. Many suppliers will have a success in a mill, and then they'll want to replicate that success. Maybe they had a high profit margin, or the project went very smoothly, or the mill was just thrilled with what they did for them. We'll say that for this example, that imagine you sold an upgrade to a container board machine in North America. And the machine was 392 inches wide. It goes 2,700 feet per minute. It has 4 dryer sections, so somewhat complex, and it's 14 years old. So replicating success, you might want to search FisherSolve, our database, for big, fast, complex machines with a similar vintage that make linerboard or corrugated medium. Perhaps the first place to start would be to find machines that meet that criteria but are owned by the same company, because you've already just had success with that company, and then wanting to start with the most viable of the group. So in our example, this company has 52 paper machines in North America, but only 4 of them meet the criteria we've outlined in this example. We can view those on a viability curve, with each bar representing one of the machines owned by this company. Fisher benchmarks all of the lines and mills in the world on the basis of their competitiveness, their likelihood to survive or shut down. And that includes cost, but includes many other factors that enter into the equation. So the scale of the operation, the technical age of the equipment, the grades they produce, and other factors. So if we look at each of these bars, we can see the highest risk, the least viable, would be this bar here on the right. So if we were going with this strategy, we may want to begin with this machine right here. Perhaps we then want to expand our search, so looking at machines that are like the one where we had our success, but are owned by any company anywhere in the world. And I've displayed those mills on a map. You can see that in Fisher Solve, and then you can also view the size of the opportunity by country in bar format. So we can see that the United States has 17 machines that are like that, so the largest market for sure. So did this exercise help you spend time in the right places? Well, based on success that we've had, we were able to identify machines that were very similar to that were competitive, and to find those anywhere in the world. So yes, it did help us spend time in the right places. You also need data to show up prepared and demonstrate value. And this goes beyond just basic preparation. That's a given, but you want to be better prepared than your competitors. Part of this is showing up with questions that are compelling and avoiding asking about things that are considered to be common knowledge, like what grades do you make, or how many machines do you have here, things that are readily available that you can assume that your competitors have. Because every comment, every question you make, you want to show your understanding, your expertise, and to be more specific and using data in order to do that. So rather than making general comments, being more specific with those. Any sales case that you make should be supported by data. And this means, just for a few examples, if you're proposing something, being able to show the estimated ROI of what you can bring in specific terms. So as opposed to saying just, we can lower your energy costs, being able to provide an estimated range of what you can do, what you've done in the past. Similarly, being able to show your market share proof and provide reference lists with very relevant mills, so ones that are similar to them, using data to identify those and then show up at your meeting with that information. So let's look at an example of that. Well, it's important to know the equipment in the mill, being able to see all the process areas, or just the area that, in this case, zooming in on the paper machine, one of the paper machines here, seeing who supplied it, how old it is, the type of equipment it has. Also knowing the production at the mill, and this goes beyond just knowing what grades they make, that they make craft paper in this example, but anything else that's pertinent to the discussion that you're having and what you're selling. So if what you're doing is impacting their basis weight range, knowing that up front, knowing if the products are bleached, if they're coated, what type of furnish, tons. It's also critical to know what's going on with the mill, their overall situation. So their cost, for instance, Fisher benchmarks every line, every mill on their cost. It's a proprietary algorithm that's based on mass energy balance. because we know the equipment, production, recipes required to make those products, all that information, we're able to benchmark all areas of cost. So knowing the mill you're meeting with, are they a low-cost producer? Are they a high-cost producer? And then knowing those areas, which specific areas? Do they have a problem with labor costs, material costs? Being able to export that so that you can use that for justification if you want to explain based on what they're spending on chemicals, for instance, what type of return you could bring. As we've looked at viability, so knowing is the mill or the line just in a position of worry about remaining in operation. In that case, it might be more a cost discussion that you would have, or are they in a strong position where they're not concerned about being shut down, and maybe the discussion might be geared more toward improving product quality, things like that. It's important to know the news about the mill, so anything that's going on with the mill that they might be facing and with the company as well as the industry. Of course, you need to know who to find, who to contact, so by area of responsibility for every mill, knowing who that would be, and then preparing by putting together lists with not only their contact info, but any other information that helps you in your discussions. So in this example, I've included the title, the name, email address, and then some information about the mill, like the number of machines they have, and then the average trim of their machines, the average speed. So did this help you show up prepared and demonstrate value? Well, we knew the equipment up front, the products, details about that, a sense of the cost, detailed sense of that, the ability to justify our proposals. So yes, it did allow us to do this very well. You also need data to accumulate corporate knowledge. And this goes beyond simply providing some software and a mandate that information needs to be collected. To get the best result, the most buy-in, your people need to be motivated to use the CRM and to collect data. This is where you'll really get the best result and won't just be constantly having to go back and tell them no one's using it or not everyone's using it. And you do that by providing value to the people that you're asking to do this. And it makes sense. If salespeople are evaluated based on their sales, not by the number of characters they enter into software, then it makes sense that you should have something there that's going to help them, because the better they do, the better for the company. And of course, you only want them to collect data that you need and that you're going to actually use, nothing more than that. So rather than having them be database managers where they're collecting information on grades, who supplied the machine, what type of head box, all that information, that's not proprietary to your company. So it doesn't make sense to have them spend the time and company money to do that, time away from sales. So it should just be the bare minimum. And the less that you have them capture, the more they'll be involved in the process and the more precise the information they gather will be. And obviously you want to have guidelines so that the data you collect is consistent and usable, and you do that by making sure everyone uses the same language. You can't have somebody calling it container board, someone else saying corrugated medium liner board. You have to have consistency with language, the framework of what they gather, so that you can use the information, you can view it, search it. Let's look at an example. It's essentially offering value to people and inviting them to use the information. So if you provide details like what we've looked at already and help people be better in their jobs, help them be more efficient, smarter in their meetings, more successful, then you're providing them with a foundation, and all they're having to do from there is to type in a note about a call report, maybe attach a proposal, and then the pipeline. So like any CRM, you would have opportunities, to-dos, call reports, In other words, they only enter what they do. Did this help you accumulate corporate knowledge? Well, yes, we've provided a foundation and we've provided reasonable expectation in terms of what should be gathered and a valuable tool that helps salespeople. You also need data to measure performance. And a CRM shouldn't just display back or reflect back your sales numbers, but it should also give your numbers more meaning. So instead of just looking at your sales history this month compared to a year ago at the same time, or this person's doing this much better than that person, it's important to understand what's happening in the market and to be able to view that data in context. Let's look at an example of how we can do this. So this is the dashboard from Fisher Solve, which will show opportunities, the pipeline, what you might expect to see in a CRM. And this can be viewed with Fisher data. So you can not only just segment by salesperson and area like you could do in other CRMs, but you've got all the Fisher data that's already in there. So it allows you to view opportunities, your pipeline, sales by grade, by company with grade, by, to be able to see who has proposals out to machines that are supplied by Valmet very specifically. So it gives you not only a true sense of what the sales actually are, but also opportunity ideas, who else you could get that's similar. In addition, you can use other Fisher data to add more color to your sales data. So this is our capacity trend data, which we've collected all historical and announced capacity for every line in the world, every company, and going forward to 2025. So if you're looking at somebody's sales numbers and you can see in that same period, well, their sales have gone down 250,000 from a year ago. But when you look at this data in context, you can see, well, 10 of the machines they were serving, 5 of them have been shut down. The other 5 are converted to making other products that we don't support. Then it gives you much more of a true picture of what's actually going on. And the capacity data can be viewed at the quarter level. So it dovetails very nicely being able to look at your sales numbers each quarter. This is a bubble chart that will show territory performance with more of a sense of what's happening in the market. So looking at market share and share growth. If we look at people in this quadrant, high market share, high share growth, those would be the sales stars. Those with high market share but the share isn't growing, they need some help. And maybe it is a matter of things have changed in their pipeline in terms of who they're serving since they last were doing so well. Then you have those with low market share and the share isn't moving, it's not growing, they're in big trouble. And then this group, high share growth, so they're going in the right direction, but overall their market share is low, so they're improving. So did this help you measure performance? Well, we're able to view sales data by data segment in Fisher Solve, and we're able to view market trends, what's growing, what's shrinking, and giving us really the true picture of performance. So yes, it does help us do that. A couple of caveats about data. Not all data is created equal, right? This is a graph you'll see on the y-axis is decision-making reliability, which is the measure of how reliable an analysis is that you're doing. Obviously, you want your decisions to be as reliable as possible. And data quality on the x-axis, which is completeness and accuracy, and that determines your reliability. Imagine you wanted to know which machines would be most vulnerable to new production of SCA+. Well, you might need 4 pieces of information on each machine to do an analysis like this. The number of tons, the age, the width, the grades, and you can specify what old means or wide or which grades. Let's imagine that the data you had was only 80% complete and accurate. Normally we think that sounds pretty good, right? Well, this is really 4 questions embedded into one question. So you would find 80% of the tons, 80% of machine ages, 80% of machine widths, and 80% of the grades. And what happens is, since all of those questions are part of the answer, they combine into a single answer. Assuming they're all weighted equally, that would mean that it's 80% of 80% of 80% of 80%. So it's only 41% accurate, which is wrong. Once we realize that this is how accurate the data has to be in order to inform good decisions, reliable decisions, it really changed us as a company because we realized that suppliers ask expensive questions that impact important things in the company, like where to put salespeople or whether or not markets are large enough to invest in product development. And if the data has holes along the way, it will only be so useful and the decisions will only be so reliable. So this curve represents how data quality and decision-making reliability go together with the 4 questions, like in this example. So you can see the 80% data quality and the 41% reliability is where they intersect. And this is where most conventional databases and directories are. They tend to be 60, 70, maybe 80% complete and accurate. You can see how data like this is not only not useful, but can be dangerous to companies. Even this area is still producing maybe 60, 70% decision-making reliability, so not quite there. We really want our data to be near perfect so that it provides trustworthy decisions, so up in this range. But how can you get such high quality data? Well, there's a cost trap, isn't there? Data like that isn't easy to come by, and that's why so many databases are in that lower area, because it's expensive and difficult to get data of such quality. And the cost of gathering and maintaining near perfect data is not only very high to a company like us. I mean, we've invested a lot of money, but that's our business. But for companies that try to do this internally, it's very expensive. And the cost of the data that you get, the quality of that, it must never exceed the value you'll get as a result of that. Otherwise, because in that case, it wouldn't even be worth it. Fisher's CRM is unique in that it not only comes with data, but its data meets the necessary quality thresholds. And I don't want to leave you with the impression that our data is perfect. It's not perfect, but it allows us to ask the type of sophisticated questions that we looked at today and still have reliable answers. It's also available at a far lower cost than if you tried to build your own high-quality database yourself or hire us independently to provide you with this data, because you're benefiting from all of the costs being shared amongst all of our clients. Fisher Solve CRM serves those 4 critical functions. It helps ensure that you spend time in the right places, that you show up prepared and can demonstrate value, that you accumulate corporate knowledge, and that you measure performance. So in the example that we looked at, you might imagine that now we can get what we came for at the grocery store.